is Romy Buchman Coquillette, who is a reformed investment banker, avid traveler, and is chair of the board of an organization that supports community development in Tanzania called Mainsprings. And also she's chair of a nonprofit called Achievement First Brooklyn, which is a network of charter schools, K through 12 charter schools. She's a Harvard MBA, in addition to a University of Pennsylvania graduate, and a good friend of mine. So we've gotten to do some fun trips together. So that's why I asked her to be the moderator. So Romy, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Ms. Perky.
All
right. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I was thinking this is actually this is the last one, but it's my first one. So I'm sorry I haven't joined for the past couple of years, Julia. So I'm not a very good friend. Sorry. But I'm excited to be here. I am not working in the travel industry, and I haven't worked in the travel industry, but like Julia mentioned, among probably a lot of you, love to travel. So I was excited to hear about the topic, and love meeting interesting people who spend a lot of their lives thinking about travel, which luckily enough, we have 3 of them here with us tonight. So I'm going to let each of our panelists, Brad, Lisa, Cara, introduce themselves. I'll go one by one. But I thought maybe we could just do it sort of quick, right? And you know, let's start a little bit close to when we graduated and sort of hop to where we are today. 2 minutes. All right. Cara, you're my first one I see. So you want to start?
Yeah, I didn't go that far after school. I was in Philly. I'm from Philly. I grew up outside the city, and I worked in public television and radio for 7 or 8 years after school, 2 years in development at an agency, a social service agency. And then in 1999, I started with the Greater Philadelphia Tourism Marketing Corporation, which eventually changed its name to Visit Philadelphia. And I was in media relations there, and it was just a fascinating period of growth for the city. I loved my job. There was a lot of stuff happening, which I'll talk about, but it's a marketing agency, and I always felt like at heart I was not a marketing person, but I was around so many brilliant people, and I could just sort of do my thing with the travel media that I was working with. And I was there for a long time through many big events. Left last year to spend time doing stuff that I really loved, which was volunteer work for a nonprofit called Mighty Writers, and Philly stuff, which I didn't really know what that would be, but it ended up being this group of these Philly pop-ups that I do, that are free, but they've also led to some paid jobs too, which is great. And yeah, we'll talk more about that at some point.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, pass it on. How about Brad?
Hi, I'm Brad Handler, and after graduation, I went to work at Apple. And back then, if you were a really gifted engineer, you could do whatever you want, and I wasn't that. So I got promoted, which told me it was time to move on. Went to law school in Virginia, got married, have 3 kids. Out of law school, worked at a firm for a couple of years, went to a very small startup as their first lawyer called eBay, took eBay public, and then while on vacation, complained about where we were staying. And my wife said, shut up or solve the problem. And that's what got me into travel.
Gotta love those wives. Lisa.
Hello. So today I'm at the Notary Hotel here in Philadelphia, and I was lucky enough to have lunch today with Cara. And after that, I spoke at PENN in a class about being a writer and what it's like to work online. So I'm from Los Angeles, and after PENN, I actually went to San Francisco to medical school, but I quickly decided that wasn't such a great choice. And I started teaching, and I learned to scuba dive, and that changed my whole life. And I ended up, I couldn't afford to scuba dive on my teaching salary. So I worked for Club Med, oddly in the mountains, but then I worked for them in the Bahamas, and that led to me working on cruise ships. So I worked on cruise ships for almost 7 years. And then I went back to teaching, traveling, a lot of writing, a little bit of travel agent, and during the COVID pandemic, I've been working on a memoir, and my book is coming out in the fall of next year.
Which do you have a name for it yet? Are you allowed to say?
Yes, I am. I'm not practiced on this part. I worked so hard being an agent and a publisher, but I haven't done this part of like, oh my God, the book's almost done. So right now, the title of my book is Bravish: One Breakup, 6 Continents, and Feeling Fearless After 50.
All right. That sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I thought everybody has a little bit of different perspective on the travel world. And so I don't know, it's random. Maybe Lisa, why don't we start with you and talk about you know, what's happened with you since, we want to just start with COVID. I know maybe we can, you know, never have to talk about that again, but all your travel adventures and you know, where you have gone in the past, like most recently, and what I know you blog a lot and you do a lot of videos, and you know, can you just tell us about your work most recently, other than your book, which will be exciting?
So I have, I'm on all the platforms. Like you said, I do a lot of videos. So on YouTube, my channel's almost to 1.7 million views. And I use all the different content platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. But one of the things that I've always tried to do with my travels is, because I'm an educator, is share my stories. And so I was very fortunate. I've been able to tell stories on KTLA in Los Angeles. And I did a story about Philadelphia, and oops, you're over there. And that's on my screen. That's how I really met Cara, because I didn't know her in college. But when I was working on the story, and I was working with Visit Philadelphia, and it turned out we figured out we were the same class. So it was really exciting to find her that way. And my most recent trip you asked about, I just took myself for my birthday to Turks and Caicos to go scuba diving. So that was really fun. If you haven't been to Turks and Caicos, I highly recommend it. But for me personally, during COVID, I really didn't travel. I have some immunocompromised family members, and I used that time to work on my book. But I would say right now, travel is fully back. Every trip I've been on, I went to write this summer for 2 weeks in Sardinia. And I mean, every flight was packed. And that was during the time when it was all in the news about the don't fly through London because they won't find your bag, and don't fly through Amsterdam because they won't find your bag. So, you know, it's been, there's obviously been some challenges and bumps in the road, but I feel like things are all back happening.
That's great. And I guess we could take a little step back, Lisa, with you and talk about, Lisa, Cara, about one of the topics you like to talk about is Philly, right? So you had mentioned that you wrote an article, felt proud of being responsible for an article for National Geographic on Philadelphia. Were you part of that article?
Yeah, I mean, that look, promoting a destination is so like, how do you encapsulate a place in a way that makes it people want to come to it? And we're lucky in Philadelphia. You know, there are some people that, you know, drink the Kool-Aid and love this place. There are a lot of people that bring friends and relatives here to visit. You know, we are within a day's drive of a quarter of the US population. So, you know, there's a really good natural pool of people that are around. And we're always pitching travel writers, travel media on stories, but twice National Geographic came calling, and these were not things that I pitched, but there was a developer who worked on the 13th Street Midtown district, and he happened to be good friends with the editor of National Geographic Travel. And I didn't find this part out till later, because you don't know how these people come across the transom. But we got a call in 2000, or an email or something, 2004 or 5, saying they wanted to do this piece on Philly. And I, helped the person find their way around. And, that's where the magic kind of comes in. And that ended up being a story that was called Philly Really, and it was in their next great episode. And it was, Philly was labeled the next great city. And I can't tell you how much that story, there are great stories that just don't get any traction. But what was magical about that was that our agency promoted it, and people started using it to talk about the city themselves. Like the mayor would quote it, and I would be at places and they would say like, yeah, we're the next great city. And it's like
Awesome.
the story becomes the thing. And so to touch a few of those transformative stories through the years was an amazing thrill.
Did it hold
And
up
that
though?
was-
Did the story about why Philly was going to be the next great thing sort of hold up since then?
That's a great question. And like, yes, in some ways we have achieved potential, and in some ways we still struggle, honestly, with the same things we always have: crime, schools, and poverty and violence. Like we are a fantastic city. And, there's a lot about Philly's character that comes through. So in some ways we did, and the numbers show that we did. Like tourism is up. So in some ways we certainly have, but I will say that one of the things that those editors and other people constantly recognize is the unpretentiousness of Philly. And that is part of the experience of being here. It's just, a very sort of real, maybe gruff, maybe gritty, but very real place. And I think people respond to that.
Yeah, that's right. And Brad, you had mentioned your wife before. I think you have a good story about how you got into luxury travel that I think a lot of us would appreciate if you want to tell us how you got into it.
Sure. So I was on vacation at the time. I had 2 kids, and we were with my brother and his family, and he had 2 kids. And I was very unhappy with where we were staying. And we were spending a lot of money, and I had young kids, and I wanted a fridge, and I wanted Wi-Fi, I wanted decent furniture, and we didn't get any of that. And I was just complaining kind of nonstop because I was frustrated. And my wife turned around and basically said, I cleaned up the language. She used much more, I guess, Philly natural language, and said, shut up, I solved the problem. And so my brother and I went down, and we spent a week at Cabana number 7 trying to solve a problem that would serve what we wanted to do and how we wanted to travel. And so that was the first company that we started, which was called Exclusive Resorts. And then we sold that company about 11 years ago, and we started our new company, Inspirato, both focused on helping families travel and friends and family travel and create memorable experiences. But really driven by the fact that my wife was very frustrated with my unhappiness.
Some people would have just brought a mini fridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just, $25 for the all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet, and your 5-year-old daughter just wants Cheerios. Like, at the end of the day, you have to find a better solution. So the goal was to find places that were as nice as the place that you live in, because that, if you're going to go on vacation, unless what you're trying to do is go camping or something like that. But if you're trying to put together a nice vacation, you want it to be a nice vacation. So we just basically tried to solve a need that we had for ourselves.
And so how's it been? How's the new product?
Pretty good. The reviews seem good. I enjoy it. We've got about 15,000 members. Subscription-based company, and people pay a fee and have access to our places all over the world. And we're, vertically integrated. It's our places, it's our furnishings, it's our staff, it's our sheets, our towels, our concierge. We control everything about the experience. And so that gives our members the ability that they're not playing Russian roulette with their vacation. When they're taking a vacation, they know they're going to get what they want. And so we don't have a lot of people that get unhappy or frustrated, because even when something goes wrong, you're still in a really great place and you figure out how to fix it.
And do you see, and I don't know if this is a general travel trend or within your company, since COVID, are people staying longer at a place like this? They want a homier place, so they're on average, they're staying longer than what they used to, or going farther or not going farther?
So that's a great question. We see that members are are typically staying a little bit longer because once you've made the effort to get there, you might as well stay a little bit longer. People prefer to have more space and room, so homes are definitely much more interesting. But we also have seen a very big increase in drive-to destinations from major metropolitan cities. So, for example, here in Colorado, there's always been a lot of drive-to because there's all the ski resorts. But in places like San Francisco or New York, we've added destinations that are within a couple hours drive, which we may not have added as soon as we did, without people shying away from wanting to fly during COVID. And those properties continue to do well for us even now. So finding drive-to destinations for large markets is probably one of the big findings that we had during COVID.
Yeah. It's interesting because I even heard today that the travel industry is still booming now, even with everything else teetering a little bit on the rest of the economy, right? So it's somehow they don't seem to be connected yet, or maybe they won't, and that's a good thing. So, so Lisa, tell us about some of the you always talk about on your blog some of your hacks or advice you have for you're a more let's say bravish traveler, right? So you want to talk a little bit about that and how any advice you have for us if we're going to take these kind of adventures and what we really need to bring and what we really don't need to bring, those kind of things.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I've been using a lot that is looking at flights. And so there's a site called Kiwi. It comes up the best if you put in Kiwi flights. It's kiwi.com. And I use that to figure out the best itinerary. A lot of people use Kayak, some people use Expedia, but I find Kiwi finds really interesting itineraries. So I went this summer to Sardinia, and I was able to use Kiwi to find, LA, London, Olbia for Sardinia. And then I booked it directly. I don't book on Kiwi. Actually, I don't even think you can, but with flights, it's better, I believe, to book direct. So you go directly to the airline, because then if you have any issues, it's easy to solve. And the other thing that I've noticed is some people don't have the airline credit card. So I highly recommend using the airline credit card because you get the miles, you get the free bag. And the other thing that I do, one of my hacks, is every time they ask me to pay a fee, I cancel the card. And so I switch. So every year I get the miles. So right now for United, I have a business card. And then in a year, when they try to make me pay a fee, I cancel that one and I get a personal card, because you can get the miles every 2 years. So it can be 75,000 miles. So I fly all the airlines. I don't fly only one. So certainly if you pick an airline, if you're flying regular pattern, it's much better to have higher status on one airline. But that doesn't always work. Like, I'd rather have the most direct, best route. And one of the things that I think is the biggest hack is it may not work if you're picking flights for a family of 6, but certainly when you're traveling alone, is unhinge your flight. So when we were going to PENN, I flew from LA. It was much better. You got a much better price on a round trip. But that's not true anymore. And so I book my outward and my return separate, and often on different airlines. So the thing that I realized this summer, when I had this great flight out, like I said, to Sardinia, LA, London, and then a little hop. But my return flight was a little bit more complicated, and the airline shifted the time of my first flight. So that if I had them as a round trip, I would have lost the whole ticket because of that. They canceled my flight. And I would have been super disappointed. So because they were even on separate airlines, but they were separate records, I kept the first one. So I think it's important to look at, we've gotten a lot of people in the habit of booking a round trip, but that's not always the best way to get to and from your destination right now.
Yeah, that's great. And then what about, do you guys just feel like, are we done with COVID? Do we have to worry about COVID when we travel anymore? I mean, anyone can comment on that, but I mean, I know that's a personal decision about, your personal needs but overall, in terms of the infrastructure you're meeting or when you travel, do you feel like we're a little bit back to the way it was, or what are your thoughts on that?
I wish it were.
Yeah, yeah.
For me personally, having worked for so many years on the cruise ship and working with people from around the world of a variety of ages, the best advice I can give you is always take travel insurance. We don't plan. I've been traveling, long before the pandemic with many issues. A part of the reason I left the travel industry was the implications of 9/11, most specifically the cruise line I was working for went bankrupt within 7 days of 9/11. So, we don't plan for natural disasters. We don't plan for, global pandemics. But the thing I can tell you is things go wrong. And, somebody breaks their leg, someone has a heart attack. We had a medical team on board, but all of us were part of the medical team on the cruise ship. We all have a role. And so take travel insurance. And if you are uncomfortable being sick in the destination you're choosing, choose another destination, because at some point something will happen. If it has never happened to you or anyone in your family, congratulations. But take travel insurance and always have a Xerox copy of your passport, and things can go wrong, like we've all seen during the pandemic. So that's my best advice, is travel insurance.
Another aspect of like, are we over it, is staffing. Even if the system and the user experience is back, and I think it essentially is, the tourism is the first and hardest industry hit in every global situation. And it was also by far, like, the tourism industry now globally lost 50% of its workforce in the first few days, the first month of the pandemic. And so now, even though people have this pent up desire to travel and are doing it, hotels, restaurants, airlines, all these places can't serve people the way they did before. So that is having an impact.
From an infrastructure standpoint, I think that the large hotel chains, companies like ours that manage and control their inventory, will continue to do most of the things that we did in the middle of the pandemic for a long, long time. And that trailing cost will get added to the cost of providing service, and is driving the cost of travel up for accommodations. And I believe will continue to do so for quite some time.
Like, just
the extra attention in cleaning, the extra
Right, yeah.
attention in rotating products in and out, and making sure that the way in which homes are serviced is appropriate. One thing that you see a lot of hotel chains do, and they provide it and talk about it as if it's a service for people now, is you'll get a little card that will say, if you don't want to have someone come in your room and clean, just let us know, because we want to serve your needs, which is perfectly logical and partially true. But then they don't have to pay as many people to come and clean when people don't want the service. But yet it's not being reduced from your bill, because there's a whole bunch of other charges that are being absorbed, which will continue to, I think, be with us for a long time.
Are your cancellation policies different? Because that was one big change around. Is Inspirato's policy different?
We did have different cancellation policies at the height of COVID. Most of them have reverted back to our pre-COVID cancellation policy. But we generally have a pretty thoughtful policy because of the way the membership works. So we want members to be able to continue to travel. We're not focused on getting, from the Wharton side, that next dollar isn't super important to us, because we are in a membership business. We're like Costco. We want people to renew year after year. So we're much more lenient and flexible on everything else, because what we really want people to do is maintain their membership.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about, we've talked before when we got together about experiential travel, and I had mentioned sort of eco-friendly travel? Like, what are your guys' thoughts on these trends? And it goes back to my other question, Brad, about like the length of stay. But do you find most people are going for adventures or relaxation?
I think at least for our customer, it's pretty well split. We have an entire segment of the business on experiences. Some are fixed, like going to see the Masters, or going to the US Open, or a French culinary riverboat tour through France that will be with groups of people who are all members. And then we have a bespoke program that will plan whatever you want. So if you want to take 8 of your friends on a bicycle tour across Greenland, we plan all that. And both of those segments are growing and I think doing really well. My most recent travel, by the way, was to New Zealand. And I was in New Zealand for 15 days, testing out what will be an experience for us next year, which will be a New Zealand golf and wine tour, which we'll be launching sometime next year. And so those kinds of tours, people I think enjoy because of the experiential nature to it, as opposed to just going and sitting on a beach for 3 days or 5 days, or going skiing down the same hill for 7 days in the middle of winter. Some people love that. Some people love an experience. And I think the travel industry as a whole is evolving to provide specialized services for people to pick and choose what they want when they want. But experiential travel is relatively new. 20 years ago, you had to do that on your own. There was nobody else really doing it.
I mean, I read about hotels that have shifted space in their building and staff to providing experiential services, just the way, like Brad said, that they're doing at Inspirato, where that's what people are looking for. You also mentioned environmentalism, and before the pandemic, like at travel conferences, probably one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest one that was discussed, was over tourism and sustainability. And that's why you see all these, like, go here, not there, go to Mardi Gras in Mobile, Alabama instead of New Orleans, or go to the Aeolian Isles instead of the Greek Isles, or go to Brooklyn instead of Philly. I mean, I can't believe I just said that. Go to Philly instead of. But a lot of those are really meant to help remove the crush on places like Dubrovnik and Machu Picchu, and these places that are literally getting crushed under the weight of over tourism. So you
get that same eco veneer in every hotel now about towels. You want us to change your towels and sheets every day, and it's the same type of thing. Great for the environment, cost less for the hotel company or the provider, and yet you're still paying for it as if you had it every day.
I think also there's different places where we've been trying to help the environment somewhat in response to the over tourism. But I have to say, as a journalist, it's very hard to get some of those stories placed. I was in Fiji, on Malolo Island at Liku Liku, and they have this incredible project. The San Diego Zoo's involved. All kinds of government agencies are involved. They've literally brought the Fijian crested iguana back from the brink of extinction. Like they thought they were completely gone. They found a mating pair, and people can go and help. Like, you can help at night look for more of the iguanas. You can help get rid of the invasive species. And some other resorts like Four Seasons in Costa Rica has a great project with coral restoration. You can even pay to help. You can have stuff named. But it's interesting. It's not very easy to get an editor to be very excited about the same story. I think customers want that experience and to help and to participate and do good. But it's not always so easy to catch that up on the editorial side.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that, the physical plant, I mean, if they're really looking to say that the hotel companies or wherever you're going are up to standard on certain eco-friendly, it's a big investment, obviously, and it would be all newer product, right? Because the older properties by definition probably are not going to be anywhere near the level that some people are looking to say that they've traveled to this LEED, designated hotel or, whatever it is. So
if anyone's really curious to learn more about it, look at any hotel company's public filings and their ESG reports, because every single public company will talk.
But do you think a lot of the hotels think that by washing sheets fewer times, they're like, that's their
And if
contribution?
if you're Marriott and you've got however many thousands of properties they have, and
31
10%,
brands.
yeah, and 10% of your rooms choose to not do that every night, that's an awful lot of laundry, and that's an awful lot of detergent that doesn't go down the drain. And so they're able to make a very large impact. You might not think that your decision in your room matters, but scale wise, it will matter. And as a side note, you might not think your vote matters. Whatever you're going to vote for, vote. So everyone matters.
That is true. That is true.
I was thinking what I could add to this. My background is somewhat different. I've been in industry and I've been an academic for a number of years, and I use my academic training and certain skill sets I have as a sort of entry wedge to go to different countries and take what my skill set is and then learn from what they do in that particular country. So I've been to some really great places and learned an awful lot. And it may be fungible in a way as an idea. If everyone has some skill set that they're really good at, and particularly universities they tend to be somewhat stodgy and but they're open to new ideas, and using that as an entry wedge, thinking about some of the things that in a country you'd like to visit would have something of what you know, then it might be a good way of approaching universities and saying how you can help them learn more about this thing in their own country. I've done that a few times in a few places, and it works out reasonably well. I enjoy it anyway.
That's great. Yeah, that's terrific. Well, what about, okay, one more on Cara on Philadelphia. I know we're not, I mean, we have a year and a half before you build us the best scavenger hunt on the planet. But are there things that you would, do you think about this whole topic about, you know, the tourism in a city and how to, or even how to be a tourist in your own city? Do you have any advice on that?
I mean, well, there's two things. There's what does tourism bring to a city, which is more than people might realize. You know, how to be a tourist in your own city is something, you know, that's something you heard so much about in the pandemic, where people were finally like taking time to go around and see things. You know, in terms of visiting this place, plan a few things. It's just like any other place. Plan a few things, have a couple anchors of the things that you need tickets for or reservations for, but leave a lot of time to wander. You know, like Lisa just asked me yesterday, what should I see? And I would just say, if you have time in Philly, easy, fascinating things to do are Eastern State Penitentiary. If you've never seen it, you know, it's a historic prison that has a very big social justice, you know, point of view right now. The Philadelphia's Magic Gardens, which is the sort of indoor outdoor folk art place on South Street by a living artist who's decorated the whole neighborhood. You know, it's whimsical and it's delightful. Shofuso, we have a beautiful Japanese garden outside in Fairmount Park, and you know, everything has a history. And I would also say, in terms of eating, like, you know, and I can always make recommendations, but go to as many places as you can, get into neighborhoods, buy, you know, the birria taco that's, you know, that from the little corner shop that's unbelievably delicious, the Ethiopian coffee place that does a coffee ceremony. I mean, you know, mix up your fancy meals with your much more casual and in some ways more memorable meals. And this goes right back to the question of experiential travel. You know, like, you don't want to feel like you're in a bubble. You want to feel like you're in a place, connecting to the place. And those sort of neighborhoody experiences are how you do that.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would say in terms of like what tourism means on the receiving end is that it should be thought about as an export industry for whatever city you're in. Like, it's not bricks and mortar, and people don't think about it that way, but it brings in millions of dollars a day, and it keeps your city competitive. And it gets opportunity for things like hosting the Pope or hosting the World Series. That's not sports tourism, but, and I'm still wounded, but, you know, hosting films, hosting political conventions, meetings, you know, all those things. They, you know, when companies coming, projects get done, and it just means a lot to the city, to have a vibrant tourism sector that reflects who it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Food is such a big deal, right? I mean, I feel like so much of travel is associated with meals you ate and markets you eat, you know, find food in and stuff. So that's a great point. All right. So do you guys want to talk about your most exciting trip coming up?
Sure, I'm happy to. My most exciting trip is I'm going back to New Zealand. So
Oh, wow.
I really enjoyed it, and I'm taking the whole family over Christmas break and going back to New Zealand. It's just incredible place. I had been there one time before for one day, and without calling him out, because I'm sure he's muted it, and he lives in Houston, so he's happy from the World Series. My college roommate is watching. I can see him. We were in New Zealand for one day, and then I left him there in college because he was just boring me to death, and came back to Denver. But now that I'm back, that's the most exciting trip I have coming.
Whoever that is, you know, feel free to unmute yourself and just get in this conversation.
I'd like to unmute myself, but I'm still shell shocked from the experience of having left high and dry in Auckland, New Zealand by Brad Handler so we could go watch a Denver Broncos game.
There you go. Come back this Christmas.
And what do you think the shortest amount? One more question on New Zealand. If you take your family, are you going for 2 weeks? Like, how long it's far to go there.
Yeah, we're only going for 9 days because I still have kids that are in high school and college, so there's a lot of commotion. But a real trip should be about 12 to 14 days, particularly if you want to see both islands.
Yeah.
One really very positive thing about that place is the people are really nice, hospitable, and it's so easy to get help if you have an issue. So I'm a big fan.
So even if your friend leaves you, you can have fun with a nice.
That's right. That's right.
But the other thing to really look out for, especially if you're thinking about going so far, is to make sure that your passport is up to date. And remember, it has to have 6 months clearance to count. I have had a lot of people lately call me and be like, I have the tickets booked and my passport I don't have time. And it's really slow right now, the expediting for passports. And don't forget that the real IDs are coming in next year. So that's another really important thing. And people always ask me, is it worth it to pay for global entry? And not only is it worth it to pay for global entry to have TSA pre-check, I also recommend you get clear also, because now they have lines at the airport that's TSA pre-check plus clear. So if you hate standing in line and you don't want to be around a lot of other stressed out people, it's worth it to have both. So TSA pre-check and clear, and check your passport. Because if you want to go to New Zealand and the kids' passports, the younger kids, it's a shorter turnaround time. They need to be renewed faster.
Yeah, and there's definitely the expediting is
it's not so good right
it's kind
now.
of not happening really right now. What about you, Lisa? Where are you going next? I mean, yeah, now that you've relaxed from Turks and Caicos, you must have been stressed there. So
Turks and Caicos was awesome. I've spent the last 3 days, I've spent 15 hours in the last 3 days working on my book. And so I'm a little bit on hold until the book goes to the publisher. And but my hope where I'd like to go back to is I like to go back diving in Bonaire again. That's one of my most favorite diving locations.
where's that? Sorry.
Bonaire in the ABC Islands. So it's Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, kind of near Venezuela.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
It's incredibly beautiful. It's very marine protected. The scuba diving is some of the best I've seen around the world. I recommend.
Cara, where are you going? What are you looking forward to?
We are going to Ohio to visit my husband's sister.
All right.
But also with the married name of Bongiorno, it should not surprise you that Italy is in rotation a lot. So I think that's yeah, that's the next. We don't have anything planned now, but we have our eyes on something, you know, going back again soon-ish. Brave-ish.
So I was just at the travel conference in New York, and Patricia Schultz said that Italy is not only the most revisited country in the world, but for its size has the most UNESCO sites. I think it has more than China. So
Yeah.
good choice.
Yeah, I mean, so much from my don't over tourism point of view, but
You're going to rural Italy.
yeah,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
that's on. We have actually gone to rural Sicily and looking for, you know, the town where his family is from, which was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah, that's great.
What about
And-
you, Romy? Where are you going?
Well, I'm going to Mexico next. That's where I'm going, Punta Mita. But I'm also going to Tanzania for that organization that I work with in January. So I'm excited about. That's probably the one I'm really excited about. I haven't been there in 6 years, so I'm excited to go back.
But can you tell everybody you're putting in Wells or the school? I forget which.
No,
one.
this is a school and permaculture organization where they help local citizens. Well, they help communities by educating the children and then teaching the community members about better farming, strategies, so that their soil becomes richer and they can grow better food and be more independent by having better farmland. It's about an hour and a half away from the second largest city in Tanzania, which is called Mwanza. So it's pretty far out there. That's one of the, it takes about 24 hours to get there, no
Wow.
matter how you do it, sort of thing. I'm from New York, I should say, not from the West Coast would be really tough. So I wonder if we want to take questions now, Julia, or how you would like to do that.
Yeah, that would be great. I don't see any in the chat. So if anyone,
People just chat on they can just talk,
you
right?
can just unmute, I don't have I need to set up the view where I can see everybody. If you can just lob in a question.
Well, if no one has a question, I have one other advice.
Yeah, please.
So one of the things that is maybe not as clear for people, I always recommend book direct with the airlines, but I find that the hotels and the cruise lines have gone out of their way to convince consumers to book direct, but you actually can get a better deal sometimes from the third-party site or using a travel agent. So one of the things that happens on the cruise ship, when you book direct with the cruise ship, people think they're getting a better deal because they're cutting out the agent. But in reality, the cruise line is protecting the travel agent percentage. So if you don't use a travel agent, you're basically just giving that money back to the cruise line. So the travel agent can book you into a group and get you amenities, or in a hotel, they can get you the upgrade or the free breakfast. It's almost impossible to do that. Sometimes you can do it on the third party site or booking direct. Hilton and Marriott and all of them have gotten so big, they want you to go direct with them. But if you're looking for some of those, wondering like, well, how did those people get that? It's likely because they're using an agent that is booking you into a group with amenities.
It's like not getting your sheets washed. Again, it's all going back to the
But in the hotel context, if you do use a third-party site to book and you need to make a change, you have the same problem generally you have with airlines, is the hotels generally have a hard time, particularly with cancellation, if you went through a third-party booking service, of giving you feedback instantly and letting you cancel. So
that's a good point. No, you're right. I just think, particularly with the cruise line, I've heard it from people so often, like, I'm getting a better rate because I'm not using the travel agent again. And it's not true. But the hotel, you're probably right. You can, it just depends what your what's most important to you?
Yeah. So.
Brad, would it be crazy to say that I think that getting a job at Inspirato as being a home scout would probably be like one of the best jobs on the planet? Julia and I know my roommate also is on this call, Ariel. The three of us will gladly take
Yeah,
We're in.
everyone thinks
We're
that's
here
a
for
great
you.
job. We have a YouTube channel, and you should go look at the time-lapse videos of what they do when we open up a new home. And after you watch that, if you still want to do it, get back in touch with me. But no one has ever watched that and said, oh yeah, that looks like not work but fun.
Can't they just find the site and let somebody else make it look great?
You have to do the first job before you can do the second job, because we promote from within. So the folks who have done that get to help pick all the new places.
That's fair.
Smart guy.
How many
My roommates
employees
are on
do
the
you
phone
have?
too.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry?
How many employees do you have now?
That is a really good question. And I would say we probably have about 600 or 700. But I preface that by saying we're a public company and I have no idea what we said in our last Qs, but it's somewhere around there. Don't rely on that for anything. Look it up because it's in Edgar. But in addition to our own employees, we have just as many people around the world that are solely working for Inspirato's interests every day, even though they may work for a different company or subcontractor or partner. So even when we have hotel relationships, oftentimes the folks at the hotel who service our suites work only on the Inspirato units and only interact with Inspirato employees, even though they may be badged for whatever hotel company.
Got it. We got a question. Stephanie asked, Cara, can you tell us about a recent cool Philly pop-up that you did?
Is
that
the
your
part where I
roommate
confess
too? Yeah.
that several of my roommates.
We all have our roommates here.
No, that's awesome. Actually, no. So the pop-ups are cool. I do them on different little known historic events, and I do them in these cool public places like a park down the street or in an artist studio, and they all come up in sort of a different way. And I do, each time I do one, there's something new happening, and I have to get better about promoting this stuff on my Instagram page, which is not my strong suit, but they're well received, and people the kind of people who will see this and say, oh yeah, I want to go hear a history pop up. If they take the time to do that, they're the type of people that would be interested. But I do have a couple quick true and falses. They're not really history and they're not really travel, but they're kind of Philly if this crowd of PENN 89ers wants to okay. So you could
take a test.
I'm going to take a little test. The curse of Billy Penn refers to mayoral corruption.
Say it again.
True or false? The curse of Billy Penn refers to mayoral corruption.
Feel free to shout it out, team, on the 27 people participating.
I know that Kristen, some of my Philly people are on this call.
I don't know enough about Philly politics. Is there any other type of mayor other than corrupt ones in Philly?
I mean, there've been 100 and some mayors, so there's a few squeaky clean ones in there. It is not. It was the curse of Billy Penn. Billy Penn is the statue on top of William Penn is the statue on top of City Hall. And the curse of Billy Penn was that once we built buildings taller than City Hall, which happened while we were at Penn, in 1987, that Liberty Place went up.
Yeah.
The No Philly team won a championship for 25 years. So that was the curse of Billy Penn. And when they built the new tallest building and the Phillies had won the World Series in 2008, they did put a tiny statue of William Penn on the girder belt on the I-beam on the top of the building. So he is secretly the tallest in the city again. One more sports one, Gritty, you know Gritty?
Gritty,
from the Galapagos Islands. True or false?
False.
Correct.
I'll go with false.
Well, the Philly Fanatic is from the Galapagos islands. According to, lore, Gritty was found in a closet in the Wells Fargo Center when they renovated, which makes sense if you know Gritty. And one more, the Philly taco is a pizza wrapped around a cheesesteak.
What?
The Philly taco.
I'll go with false.
I'll go with true.
It is absolutely true.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I don't want one, but I think it's
Yeah, it really
I don't even
sounds
want
horrible.
No, but people do it.
Wow. Well, maybe we can do some sort of pop-up over reunion.
I'll be here.
And I would say one more thing from having been on ships so long, working with people from all different ages, traveling, all around the world, is the advice I received most from people in those settings was don't wait. Like, I met a lot of people that had, all these plans after our kids are grown up, after the house is paid off, after this is what we're going to do together. And so many times people said to me, I hope that you'll, keep traveling around the world and keep meeting from people from different cultures, but remember that life is really precious and it's important to make memories when you can.
Totally
Amen.
agree. Totally agree. I guess the only planning tip that I can give folks, and this really, we started it when we had really young children, but I think it fits for all ages, and harkens back to this discussion about making time to do other things when you come to a city, is I never plan more than one and ice cream. So every day there's one thing we have planned, and it's either ice cream or the pool, depending on where we are. For the kids, we're going to be able to do that as well. And sometimes you fit in 3 or 4 things because you find them and they're fun, but I'm a big believer in not over planning. It's better to under plan, have one thing, one anchor for every day of what you want to do, and then just experience wherever you are, and not be worried about it. I hear from a lot of members who tell me that they put so much energy into planning that when they get there, they're still very focused on what's happening the next day and the next day. And that totally defeats the purpose. You just have to kind of let it go.
Yeah, that's great. I actually feel like it's even more true as your kids get a little older too, because they kind of want to have their own time more, right?
Which is even better, because then it's not one thing in ice cream. It's you go do whatever you want and let us go do what we want. It's even better.
Yeah. Yes. Win-win.
Another big thing, there's a huge movement in social justice tourism and in identity tourism, and people trying to, go places to learn more about some aspect of themselves or of other people, of injustice. And another piece of that is, shopping, buying local where you go, and looking for Black-owned businesses, looking for women or gay-owned businesses. I mean, that's a decision people can make when they travel. And any place you go, it's not hard to find those lists. And even when I was saying earlier about some of the off the beaten track places, a lot of those places are, in fact, just because of opportunity, these Black-owned, minority-owned businesses. And that's a great way to, vote with your feet, vote with your purse.
Well, one last thing about, with your feet is, if you're in a city, even if you've been there a lot, do a walking tour.
Mm-hmm.
Those are easy to find, relatively inexpensive. In a lot of cities, they're free. And walking tours really kind of help set the tone and help you figure out, if you're going to be a couple of days in a city, places that you didn't even know were there get pointed out.
Lisa, how many countries have you been to?
I've been to 102 countries, and my last continent is Antarctica. So I'm hoping to take myself there after I turn the book in.
Every year we do a whole cruise there. Just let me know.
Sign me up.
We'll all go.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll all go celebrate.
I won't go. I get seasick in the bathtub. But
Yeah.
welcome to me.
I will not go either, but I'll look at your pictures.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll make you a video.
Yeah, exactly. 102 countries. That's pretty impressive.
When your house moves, when you live on a ship, it's a little bit easier. And then
that's good.
I basically lived with my backpack for almost 3 years in Asia. So that I got around quite a bit. A lot of long bus rides, but very interesting.
Good for you.
Can't wait to read about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, if everyone's, if anyone has any more questions, speak now. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up and let our panelists go on their merry way, unless they want to hang out and chat some more. I just want to thank you all again. This was great. It was so much fun. It's so exciting to think about what's possible again. And you guys are all great tour guides from your desktops, your laptops. So thanks again. Anyone who wants to hang out for a little bit can. And thanks for coming, everybody who's out there in Zoom world.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
for
you,
having
guys.
us and for all your
Bye,
planning.
thank you.
Thank you.
And
Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you.
Begrudgingly, but.
Oh.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that team.
That's huge. I'm in Austin. I'm not in Houston.
Wait, Lisa, how many countries are there?
It depends whose list you use.
You gotta be getting close.
Well, I've been in Africa is 53, and I've only been to 4. So
Oh.
that's quite a bit. I'm getting pretty close. I talked to the Brazil tourism board. I had almost gone twice, but then COVID. So I have a few ideas. I'm working on some stories. Maybe you and I can do a movie together in a place.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
Well, the Google says 195.
195. All right, you're
Give or take.
we're halfway there.
Give or take, yeah.
Google's a pretty good one. Some things evolve.
Dr. Google.
Dr. Google.
You'll
Yeah.
have to find some river boats in Africa to travel efficiently.
I'm just gonna ask Brad. Brad has everything, so.
Yeah, I think we're only in 3 or 4 countries in Africa. We're very focused on the North American tourists, and those are all what we call the kind of once in a lifetime trips. There's not a lot of return visits. So it's hard to really build up infrastructure there because you can't support it. But we do fill out and sell out everything we do.
Brad, do you own the properties or do you have long-term kind of management contracts on them?
They're all long-term leases with the owners, and then we take all the risk. So they're usually anywhere between 5 and 10-year leases. So it's all our own furnishings and everything in the units. So we get them either from individuals, not as much anymore. That's kind of when we started. Now we mostly partner with developers and take large portions of their developments, and then they work to sell out their development. And then by the time our lease ends, they're ready to sell their last couple of units.
Oh, that's very smart.
Yeah, so it dramatically lowers our acquisition cost because you can lease a property for a lot less expensive than buying a property. The old company, Exclusive Resorts, our first company, we actually own the property. So it's hard to run a business where you both are a real estate investor and a hospitality company. So we made the decision with Inspirato to just be a hospitality company.
Huh. So now you're competing against your old company, basically?
I mean, we partner with them. We have a lot of their homes. We're so much bigger. It's not even.
Yeah.
It's a different,
It's an order of magnitude difference.
It's a different market too, right?
Same basic market. A lot of people are members of both. When we started Inspirato, we basically made it easy for all our Exclusive Resorts members to become Inspirato members at little or no cost. So a lot of people still have both. Not even close anymore.
Well, they don't have the secret sauce of you and your brother.
Correct. They don't have us. And let's see, we're now in year 12, I think, 11 or 12 of Inspirato. And we must have 40 or 50 employees who've worked for us for more than 15 years because they've been at both companies. So we brought many of the people with us when we started the second.
And we didn't talk about having your experience working with your brother. I don't think I've never worked with my sister. I don't know if anybody else has worked with a sibling, but that's pretty impressive.
This is our third company that we run together, and we have very different skill sets. And we made a determination when we decided to do it. We made the determination early on that we each knew what the other's good at, so we stay out of each other's way. And we talk too many times every day, but we provide a unified front. So even when we have a senior, our senior exec meetings, even if we've disagreed about something, we've come to a determination of what we're going to do in the company, and we provide a united front. And that has really been the key of making sure that people don't feel that they can play one against the other. And so we work it all out ourselves before we bring it to the larger group.
Guys, I'm going to hop, but thank you so much. Thanks for the chance to do this. And
Yeah, it was fun to meet you.
Lisa, it was
Thank
fun.
you.
Romy,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the good
Yeah,
guidance.
nice to meet
Thanks,
you
everyone.
guys.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank
We'll
you
see
guys.
you
See
in Philly soon.
at the reunion.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.